Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter McCleary from a company called HR Coach Australasia, and we are today releasing some research that we've reviewed over the that's come from material from the last 12 months on what we've seen around generational issues. Now, I'll have to apologise in advance. I'm caught in an airport between between flights, and so if I hear too much noise from the airline, I'll be just stopping and then commencing once that noise concludes. Anyway, let's get rolling. If you've got any questions as we go, put the question in with a question mark and I'll try and spot it on the right-hand side for me. I don't know if that's the same for you. And sometimes I'm going to be asking initially to put your hands up on some issues and see what the general mood for the room is. Let's go. And we will be finished in inside 30 minutes, potentially by 25 minutes. Whoop. Don't you love it when you think you're right to roll? Okay, unlocking the generational code. Generation pressure at work. Does it really exist? Now, for those who are already online, put your hand up if you think there are pressures at work related to the makeup of the generational makeup of your labour force. Put your hand up. One assumes there must be, otherwise you wouldn't be on this particular session. I'm not seeing too many hands go up, so maybe people aren't experiencing that pressure of older people, younger people in between us. Or maybe you're not hearing. Let's hope you can hear. Anyway, hands up if you think there is actual generation pressure at work, or hang on, wait for that call to go. Let's now show you what we've found around this generational pressure at work. Firstly, we've got to explain what those generations are. So in today's research that we're going to be outlining, we're going to be looking at Generation X, Y and Z, and also baby boomers. We do in our sample have veterans, but we have such a small sample of veterans relative to the other age groups that we're not making any specific reference to veterans, who will be those people in your workforce who are greater than 65 years of age. This research was prompted by one of our national conferences a year ago, because we're a national service HR consulting business, 130 consultants spread around Australia, and when we get them together on a national conference, they tell us what they're looking for, and they were looking for some advice on how to manage the generational demands with their own client groups that they work with. That prompted us to review responses that we could trap via our own Star Workplace data, and we reviewed the data of 3,500 respondents who had responded over a one-year period, representing 100 organisations, around what they are satisfied by at work and what they're not satisfied by at work. Because if you're ever going to be effective with the generational demands, you've got to first understand what they are, and then you have to deliver services to meet their specific needs. We are expecting to see in this research some very clear things, generation specific. So let's have a look at what we found. If we look at the baby boomers, so they're the ones we're expecting still in the workforce. They're up to 65 years of age. And the things that satisfy them the most are they like to be trusted, they are seeking flexibility in work, and they need to know what they're accountable for. Whereas on the things that they are most dissatisfied about are things to do with remuneration and pay, opportunities for advancement, and professional development in their jobs. So what we're hearing from people in the workforce that are 50 to 65 years of age, 70 years of age, they like to be trusted, they seek flexibility, they need to know what they're accountable for, but what they're not getting is professional development, opportunities for advancement, and sometimes they feel their remuneration pay has plateaued. So you need to be mindful of that when you're dealing with this age group. You need to deliver what they need. You need to be mindful of what they find dissatisfying. If we look at Generation X, so these are the guys who are below 50 years of age in your workforce, and they're going back to late 30s and 40s. We see some commonality here. They like to be trusted and they like flexibility in their work arrangements. But they also have a top requirement to satisfy customers' needs. That's both internal and external customers. If we look at the things that dissatisfy them, remuneration and pay is a dissatisfier for them. And probably because by then they've got lots of costs coming at them with older kids, mortgage expenses, housing costs, all sorts of other stuff. They're also frustrated by efficient planning and decision making and getting enough training and development for their job. So specific to their role, they are feeling they are not getting the training and development appropriate to stay competitive in their job. All let's have a look at the next group. So one other thing around Generation X. Amongst all the variations between age groups, the greatest challenge in workforce demographics between all the age groups is actually between Generation X managers and their employees who are of the same age group. 22% variance. And it's to do with remuneration and pay. Generation X managers, because we can also sort this data by managers versus employees, are very comfortable with remuneration and pay. But Generation X employees who are not in management roles are feeling left behind on dollars and are feeling frustrated. What they're probably also saying in that is they are wondering why people their own age group are the bosses of them, and why aren't they the boss? And then they're presuming then that those Generation X managers are getting a lot more money, so they're disaffected around rem and pay, and that's why they're also demanding training and development for my job, because they are seeking to close this gap between employees and managers amongst Generation X. So if you've got a large workforce, Generation X, both managers and employees, you can expect a significant disconnect between satisfied managers, dissatisfied employees around pay. It's the largest variance of all that we reviewed. What about Generation Y? So these are the younger guys in the workplace who are still trying to find their feet. And it's not surprising then. They're trying to find interesting and challenging jobs. Okay? They want to be challenged, and they are easily bored. So it needs to be interesting. They still want to be trusted and they want flexibility in their work arrangements. They've still got issues around remuneration and pay. Looking for opportunities for advancement because they're idling, if you like, in their own heads. And they've got an issue around efficient planning and decision making because they're often at the receiving end, the frontline employee end at this age group. They are seeing inefficiencies coming through in terms of decision making and its impact on them. Finally, the research showed that the Generation Z, so these are really young people now in your workforce, they too are after being trusted and having flexibility in their work arrangements. That flexibility is probably to do with more around them trying to deal with school or part-time jobs or just a number of part-time jobs. What's interesting is that the thing that they are most satisfied about, or they're looking in terms of satisfaction, is clean, comfortable, safe work environment. Now, that's a typo there. It should have safe as well. So it's clean, comfortable, safe work environment. So they have to feel safe in their work environment, and they expect it to be clean and comfortable and current. So if you're in a dated work environment using young employees, that will not satisfy them. On the bottom three for these guys, opportunities for advancement is an issue. Formal communication is an issue. They look for formal communication, but they feel often outside of the communication loop. And that may be because of their part-time nature of work means that they miss some of these conversations or discussions. And they also want to be recognised for their contribution. So they're so new in the workforce, they want to know if they're doing a good job, or if they can do a better job, what do they need to be doing? And sometimes that's not happening for them. So they will sense that they're not being appreciated for what they have done, or they've been found fault with what they've done instead of being recognised for what they have done from a low base. So you need to be mindful of that because they are often emotional rather than rational at this age group as well. If you've ever had teenagers, you'll understand that statement. Let's look at what that means then. If we look at across all age groups now, what we know is that on the left-hand column here, that their high point satisfiers on two measures is consistent, being trusted and flexibility in work. So whether that's flexibility around lots of part-time jobs, whether that's flexibility about being able to support a young family, whether that's flexibility about being an older employee trying to look after being a grandparent. All of those issues of flexibility are striking home. They are a hot item for everyone in terms of what satisfies them. And being trusted to actually do their job, okay? Sure, there are differences on the edges. Baby boomers need to know what they're accountable for. Generation X want to satisfy customer needs. Generation Y, interesting, challenging job. And Generation Z, clean, comfortable work environment. But the key issues, if you're going to keep these guys motivated and enthusiastic and engaged and aligned, is around flexibility and being trusted. A number of differences, right-hand side, and you can see them there in that one slide, around different age groups have a different expectation about what dissatisfies them and what needs to be fixed. If you don't fix their points of dissatisfaction, they will probably prompt them to move on. Unless maybe they're baby boomers, and baby boomers these days often feel trapped. But you're not getting the best out of them if you're not dealing with some of these issues. So they might be seat warming rather than performing. So really important slide, this one. And the other point that's not in this slide but you need to be aware of, I talked about it on an earlier slide, Generation X, the issues about remuneration and pay are enormously different between managers in that age group and employees in that age group. So employees feel they are not well paid, and we think from the research that they are looking to their managers of the same age, potentially in their head the same skill set, who are being paid a lot more in their heads. So you need to be aware of that if you've got a crew of managers and employees Generation X, there will be a significant disconnect on the money front. And it won't be reaffirmed to you from the managers because they'll be comfortable on their pay. Righto, we've already identified trust and flexibility key to all. So it's important to us all. You have to ensure trust and flexibility across all age groups. Let's have a look at what else we've worked out from reviewing the generation code stuff. And these are the tips on what you need to be doing. You need to monitor where people are. You need to orientate them appropriate to their roles. You need to reassess regularly to see that you're still tuned in, ensure that your focus is right, and think about the most appropriate way to provide feedback to the next generation. Let's unlock some of it. Let's break that down a bit so it's a bit easier. Monitor. If you use Star Workplace or if you use some of our other survey tools, you will see that we're actually always trying to understand what's going on by generation. So if you're not using a tool like Star Workplace or whatever tool you are using doesn't help you break it down by generation, you need to look at it because there are different needs by generation. And you need to be aware of what's satisfying and what's dissatisfying and understand what the drivers are of some of those points. So whatever you're using to assess your engagement and alignment, make certain you're assessing them by age group as well. In terms of orientation, most people need to understand what we do and how we do it, but you need to also give them the why we do it now. More importantly, Generation Z, Generation Y, they want to know that there is purpose to their work, and X. So the only way you're going to get purpose is understand why we do what we do. So don't think it's just about teaching people the tasks they're required to do and how we do it and what we do. They need to understand the why we do this. Purpose is core to the younger generations. In terms of reassessing scenarios, what we mean here is from a management perspective, You've got to ensure that your expectations are clear, realistic, current. And what's realistic and current today, if things shift, you update them. We need reverse mentoring. Another piece of this is then, if we accept the premise that we need to change our feedback models and we have to introduce a more two-way feedback, we've worked out now that we need new models around performance reviews, performance coaching, and we've introduced a concept called performance groups. Let's explain this matrix, because it falls out of that research model around how do you make this work when they want trust and purpose and flexibility. They want to know that their work is meaningful and they know what they're doing and they're part of the action. So you need to assess their trust first. And if you look at this grid on the left-hand side, organisations with a low level of trust probably need to do performance reviews in terms of the appropriate feedback model for their business. Where we've got higher levels of trust, we can move to more performance coaching, conversation, discussion. That's easy on the left-hand side. Once you know your levels of trust, and something like Star Workplace, we assess trust and benchmark you against 600 organisations in Australia as to whether you've got high or low trust. This horizontal matrix is a bit different. Low levels of complexity, high levels of complexity is around the nature of the work that's being done in the organisation, or it's around the level of maturity in the organisation. So if it's never done anything in HR, it probably is in an area of low complexity or maturity. So if it's looking to put performance feedback matrix in, it needs to think about performance reviews first. And over time, as it builds its HR maturity or the complexity of its expectations of its employees, then you would move across towards performance groups, performance coaching, and then you would max out at only performance groups. Now, a lot of discussion around what's the right performance process, performance review process. We now believe when we match this up against what we're reading and reviewing out of the X, Y, Z generations, the matrix is what works. And so an organisation like Deloitte, who are argued as the organisation without performance reviews, have enormous performance group activity going on every week, every project. And that's because their projects are high complexity, they have high levels of maturity around the HR process, and presumably high levels of trust. But you can't go there if you've got low levels of trust, low levels of complexity, or low levels of maturity. So this is the feedback model we now believe makes sense when you look at the research coming out of the three different generations. Okay? And performance reviews still have a place where we've got low levels of trust or low levels of complexity in the organisation. And then we need to move to performance coaching, ultimately evolving to performance groups. It's an important piece falling out of the research around generations and making sense of the debate around what's the right performance vehicle for our employees. Righto, let's have a look at unlocking that code. The key bits are, I'll just whip back, the key bit around anything to do with this is this slide, or more importantly, everyone wants trust, everyone wants flexibility, irrespective of age group. So you need to be delivering on that. Then you need to be thinking about how to monitor that age group issue, ensuring your orientations not only tell people what to do and how to do it, but tell them why they're doing it, because people need purpose, particularly the younger generations. Some other stuff about changing things as things change. So reassess scenarios as circumstances change. Shift your focus because you've got to build trust. And finally, introduce the right feedback for both the levels of trust in the organisation, the level of complexity in the organisation, the level of maturity in the organisation, because that's what's going to make this work, and help deal with these differences that every generation has. Normally, if we're in an open forum, we'd be asking any questions. What I'd ask you to do is, if you've got any questions now, would you mind please typing them in, and I will respond to them. We also know we're getting towards the end of the webinar at this point, although I'm going to be answering any questions that are typed in. If you'd like to know more about the issues around generational code, look, talk to any of the coaches that might have referred you to us, because they have access to this material and access to a whole heap of other supplementary material. Alternatively, if you want to talk to us, come to us via business@hrcoach.com.au, our website, hrcoach.com.au, or our phone number, 1300 556 770. We appreciate you attending. I'm not seeing any questions typed in, so hopefully your takeaways, the message is clear out of the research. Remembering this was of 3,500 people, representative of all generations in the workplace in the last 12 months, saying here's what they're looking for, here's what they're not getting, and here's what dissatisfies them, and here's what they're looking for that satisfies them. So stay on top of those things, because it will close the gap, improve the performance of your teams. There are no questions, so we'll be closing it now, and I hope you have a good rest of the week. See ya.